Money refers to any object that serves as a recognized medium of exchange or standard of value in a given society. The deployment of money facilitates the exchange of goods and services. Money is also a tool for trading the fixed but transient cold time. Being the most liquid of all assets common to man, it therefore does not suffice as a true source of wealth, as it is better exchanged for other assets that multiply in value over time. The concept of money has been around since the dawn of civilization. Throughout history, most currencies, including the US dollar, were linked to valuable commodities, and the amount in circulation were largely dependent on the government's gold and silver reserve. In 1971, President Richard Nixon severed the links between the dollar and the gold standard. This necessitated the dawn of what the world now refers to as fiat currency.
I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets.
So Nixon closing the gold window essentially turned the US dollar into a fiat currency. Fiat money is a government-issued currency that is not backed by a physical commodity like gold or silver, but rather by the government that issued it.
The US Federal Reserve, United States Federal Reserve, that acts like the central bank in many countries. Now, for a lot of countries, the central bank is the country's central bank. It belongs to the country. It belongs to the people. It is the government that runs the central bank in many countries, not all of them. In fact, some countries have already lost their central bank, and the people don't know it. But the US Federal Reserve, which is supposed to be or known as the central bank for the US, doesn't belong to the United States.
The way the monetary system works is something that isn't actually hidden away from all of us. It's out in the open, but it's complex and people just they can't see how it works. It's hard for them to imagine that we're living in such a hoax. Others are meant to be secret, but the truth is slowly coming out, like the Federal Reserve being a private corporation and not really part of the U.S. government.
What should be the proper relationship between a chairman of the Fed and a president of the United States?
Well, first of all, the Federal Reserve is an independent agency, and that means basically that there is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take. What the relationships are don't frankly matter.
In addition to this, it seems that the Fed can't even be touched by investigating parties.
So I'm asking you if your agency has, in fact, according to Bloomberg, extended $9 trillion in credit, which, by the way, works out to $30,000 for every single man, woman, and child in this country. I'd like to know, if you're not responsible for investigating that, who is?
We have responsibility for the Federal Reserve's programs and operations, audits, to conduct audits and investigations in that area. In terms of who's responsible for investigating, would you mind repeating the question one more time?
Mr. Chairman, my time is up, but I have to tell you honestly, I am shocked to find out that nobody at the Federal Reserve, including the Inspector General, is keeping track of this.
That means the United States dollar does not belong to the United States. And I'm serious. That means that all the money of the United States is loaned to the country by the Federal Reserve. What does that tell you? Just hold on. You can check this out. These things I'm telling you are real. And they're not new. They're not new. So all the money is loaned to the country. Loaned to the government by the Federal Reserve. which is owned by certain individuals and organizations. And of course, organizations are run and owned by individuals. Yes, sir. Yes. And most of them are not of the United States. A lot of them are in Europe, which means many of those who own all the money of the United States are foreigners. Yes, sir.
A central bank is an institution that issues and regulates the currency of an entire nation. Based on historical precedent, the typical powers inherent in central banking practice include the control of interest rates and the expansion and contraction of the money supply itself. Now, the central bank does not simply issue money to the government, it loans it to them with interest. Then, through the mechanisms of increasing and decreasing the supply of money, the central bank essentially regulates the value of the currency issued. It is critical to understand that the entire structure of this system can only produce one thing in the long run: debt. It doesn't take a lot of ingenuity to figure this scam out, for nearly every single dollar produced by both the central bank and its regulated commercial banks is loaned at interest. That means every dollar produced is actually the dollar plus a certain percentage of debt based on that dollar. And since the banking system has the monopoly of the production of the currency, and they loan each dollar out with an immediate debt attached to it, where does the money to pay for the debt come from? It can only come from the banks again, which means the banking system has to perpetually increase its money supply to temporarily cover the outstanding debt created, which in turn, since that new money is loaned out at interest as well, creates even more debt. The end result of this system is essentially slavery, for it is technically impossible for a government, and thus the public, to ever come out of the self-generating debt.
In light of this, a shocking reality awaits many who have built solid faith in the United States dollar without prior knowledge.
The dollar is an ordinary paper that is backed only by propaganda. The statement that I just made is a very serious one, but it is true. It is not as good as most of your currencies in your various countries that are backed by something. The dollar is not backed by anything. It is backed by the power of propaganda.
The Federal Reserve is very forthright about what they're doing. If you read their websites, they'll tell you it's a confidence game. They tell you that there's no intrinsic value in their money. They'll tell you that they print it backed by absolutely nothing. They actually display all these facts. But if you tell somebody in the public that this stuff is created out of thin air, there's no backing whatsoever, it's absolutely worthless, it's about as valuable as monopoly money, they'll look at you like you're nuts.
One day, all those who have put their faith in it will discover it will fizzle away. Suddenly, you can write the date down, what I've told you. When the crash comes, it will be so painful, and many will weep. It will be worse than what happened in Germany many years ago when they canceled their currency. This one will be worse, because it's not like a man canceling the currency. It is the worthlessness that it runs into.
Is there an example throughout history of a fiat currency, a piece of paper that's unbacked by anything, surviving?
Short answer, no. Long answer, no. And here's why. When Addison Wiggin took over at the Daily Record, when they got cranked up, Bill Warner asked him to catalog all of the fiat currencies throughout history and what happened to each of them. Addison dutifully went to work. Within a short period of time, he had gone through the alphabet. All the fiat currencies that started with the letter A were done. They all went to zero. He was halfway through the letter B and all the fiat currencies that started with the letter B, and there were 600 of them in just the first letter and a half of the alphabet, and every single one of them went to zero. Every one. 600 fiat currencies that start with the letter A, and half of the ones that start with the letter B are 600 of these things. Not one ever came close. You think this one, the United States dollar, is going to be the first one after all that? I don't think so. No. No currency, fiat currency has ever survived. None.
Early in my research, I heard this expression that the Americans have exported their inflation. I thought, what is that? How can you export your inflation? Put it in a box and send it out? What do you do? Well, now I understand. You export your inflation by simply sending all these dollars that you created to these other countries, and then they send you their refrigerators and their cars and whatever, their TV sets. So you get hardware, and they get little pieces of paper. It's a great deal for the American people for a while. For a while. Sooner or later, all of those pigeons come home to roost. When the time comes, as it looks like it's now coming, when the rest of the world is saying, we don't want to play this game anymore, Uncle Sam's dollars are just becoming worthless, there are too many of them, we've got to find something else other than American dollars, then those dollars start to come back to America. People say, we don't want them anymore, what do we do with them? Once this revs up, and we've got this little trickle of money coming back that we previously exported, once it becomes a flood and it starts to rush back, now we are getting our former exported inflation brought back to us, and then we'll see the quantity of money inside the United States grow much more rapidly even than the Federal Reserve can create it, because we're getting a previous money back. And that's when we will really see the tanking of the US dollar in terms of what it will buy.
So if it crashes, you get absolutely nothing. Alternatives to the dollar is an important and a serious clarion call. And hear me, and I'll tell you why. On the surface, what happened with Russia is enough to teach you a lesson. They seized Russia's money because they're not in good terms with Russia. So all the investments of Russia in the United States got seized overnight. They're telling you that's what can happen to you if you don't listen to them.
We dared the world to get off of the dollar. We dared them how? By declaring war on Russia and specifically on the Russian people and weaponizing money. We are at war right now with Russia. We are not shooting yet, and I hope it doesn't come to that, and if we cool down, it won't come to that, but we are at full-scale economic war with the people of Russia. We are actively collapsing their currency, using the dollar as a weapon, but there's great risk to that. We dare the world to consider alternatives, to get off the dollar. And guess what? Right now, MBS in Saudi Arabia, in a gangster move, sees that King Dollar is wobbly, and it looks like he's going to deliver a right-cross knockout blow to the dollar. Here's why this matters to Americans way beyond foreign policy. Here's why it matters to your everyday life. If you've never left the United States of America, if you don't care about other currencies, King Dollar is what has allowed the United States to finance what are nightmarish levels of deficits. We've effectively gotten away with it because of the global thirst for dollars, because all transactions, whether it's an oil transaction between Saudi Arabia and China or an arms deal, whatever it is, all major transactions in the world occur in dollars. And the thirst for dollars means that there was an appetite for our outrageous amounts of debt. If that appetite starts to wane and eventually goes away, and it very well could, this country quickly becomes Argentina. We quickly enter a death spiral of debt. And don't think it can't happen here, because Argentina was once, a century ago, a very wealthy, very advanced country on par, if not exceeding the United States in its prosperity. So it seems unthinkable, but it can happen. After a century of dollar primacy in global capital markets, Joe Biden, in just over a year in office, is already dethroning King Dollar, and this matters to the lives of every single American.
What happened with the Russia-Ukraine war, when the so-called Russian oligarchs lost their money because the United States impounded their wealth, right? And not only United States, it happened also in Europe. So I guess it's helping some nations to think now that keeping their foreign reserves in the US dollar might not be a great idea after all. It can be seized. They just found out. They just found out. And as a matter of fact, it's time to reconsider trading in dollars. It's time to reconsider it. I'm talking about the nations now. It's time to review whether the American dollar should be the reference for exchange. It's time to review it. It's time to consider other currencies. I know that what I'm saying at this particular time shakes up, the United Nations, United Nations, because the US will be thinking, what does this mean? And the UK will be thinking, what does this mean? Europe will be thinking, what does this mean? It means a lot. It just means it's time to go off the US dollar for many countries. It's about time. Those are loaded words, but if you look at the future of what's going to happen, I'm only just telling you it will happen anyway. It's coming.
A prudent person with insight foresees danger coming and prepares himself for it.